This is Morning Motivation for Educators on the Bee Podcast Network. Learn about all the shows at beepodcastnetwork.com. You'll hear from a variety of formal and informal educators who help put this podcast together. If you'd like to contribute your voice to the show, please go to morningmotivationedu.com to apply. I am Karen Dudek-Brannan. I was a school SLP for 14 years where I specialized in language literacy and executive functioning and also held various teaching, leadership, and research roles. Now, I am the host of the De facto Leaders podcast on the Bee Podcast Network, where I help school therapists, teachers, and administrators be leaders on their school teams, no matter their job title. In my programs for therapists and educators, one question that comes up a lot is, how do I approach my boss, so this might be my school administrator, if they are asking me to do something that either doesn't make sense for my role or maybe I feel is not in the best interest for my students? I've seen this come up with basic procedural things, like maybe it's a principal asking a therapist for lesson plans, and maybe lesson plans don't necessarily make sense based on their discipline. Maybe there's something else that's similar, but not exactly the same thing. So more related to daily operating procedures. And then I've had other things come up that are bigger issues, like how you provide services to students. So for example, one thing that has come up is, so maybe a special education professional like a therapist or a teacher who knows that some of their students can be served well in the general education classroom, but there might be certain times when they need to be pulled out for certain specialized services. And maybe they have an administrator who's saying, well, we're doing all inclusion this year and all of the services need to be delivered in the classroom. And maybe the therapist or the special ed teacher knows that that might be appropriate for some students, but other students are not going to be adequately served. It's not the least restrictive environment for all of the students, at least not for their entire school day. Now, what people often default to is, I need to go and show my principal or my director or whoever it is, I need to go to them with a list of research articles and evidence or a list of my concerns. That's typically where people's heads go. But I do not recommend dealing with the situation in that way. And here's why. A person who is in a leadership role in a school system has a lot of people who are coming to them with concerns. And many times the people who are working directly with students have a better pulse on what's going on just because they're there directly working with students. So the people in those leadership positions need those people who are directly working with students to be the eyes and the ears, helping them out, letting them know what's going on. A good leader is actually going to want that. So the first thing that I recommend people do if they're in a situation like this is get really clear on what that person is actually asking of you. In the lesson plan example, that building principal in that particular scenario probably wasn't really asking for lesson plans. And this was a situation where this is a brand new principal in their first principalship in a new building, and it's the first week of school. So what that principal is really asking is, number one, I need help from my staff to make sure that I am checking all the boxes and making sure that I'm doing all of the necessary things that I absolutely have to do in my job. That's one thing that they're actually asking when they're saying, I need everyone's lesson plans. The second thing that they're actually asking for is they want to know that the people who are supporting students are doing their jobs. They're asking for some kind of communication so that they can understand what's going on. So in that particular situation, what I recommended to that person was that they have a conversation with the principal to figure out what they're actually asking for. And if you still think that what they're asking is not actually going to serve the purpose of what they really want, then what you can do is come up with an alternative solution for how they can get what they want and you can get what you want as well. So in that particular situation, it might be, well, this is actually going to create more work for me. It's going to make it harder for me to do my job. There's a better way for me to communicate what I'm doing and make sure that I'm keeping my administrator in the loop. And the same thing goes with the other example of service delivery. Chances are, if a leader is saying, here's this initiative we're doing in our building, then there's probably some reason for it. Maybe they want to make sure that students are having access to the general education curriculum or having more time with their peers. There's probably some why behind it. Maybe there's some policy that's been put in place, and I would handle it the same way. What are they actually asking for? Why are they asking for it? And is there some way that you can approach them with a solution that's going to address their concerns, but also allow you to still serve your students in a way that is effective? If you are working in the school systems, supporting students, providing specialized supports, I talk about issues like this on the De facto Leaders podcast. We talk about all kinds of issues relating to education, special education, and reform in the K-12 system. To listen to the episodes, you can go to defactoleaders.com. Thanks for listening, and whatever role you have in education, we have a podcast for you at bpodcastnetwork.com. Who among your friends and colleagues needs to hear this message today? Please share it with them right now.